If you are a man of legacy who experienced emotional, mental, or physical violence in your childhood home, this video is for you. If you are looking to really fully step into mastery in all realms in your life and wanting to um, unlock perhaps the next level, whether it's in business or in your relationships, and you experience violence in your childhood home, this video is for you. So thank you for joining me. I'm excited to drop in on this subject. So one thing that I have been seeing in with my private clients and in the work that I've been doing is, most people have a fairly good understanding of how having, say, a violent parent, or especially a violent father, impacts men. And it can be in many different ways, right? It can show up as carrying that forward in some way, being also out of control in with violence, whether it's emotional, mental, or physical. Many men have the ability to stop doing that. But what I have seen is that impacts men in a way that, unless they've alchemized it, that they may not be aware of in terms of their ability to show up fully and deeply in their providership role, in their relationships and intimacy, in their relationships with other men, and also in their relationship to the protector role, in being able to protect. And a big part of this has to do with when we experience violence, often what happens is we suppress the aggressive or violent part of ourselves. So every single human being has the capacity and potential for violence. It's not unique to some. We all have that ability within us. Our bodies are, literally weapons that are, for most people at this point in humanity, or in our timeline, most people are not training their bodies and don't have that awareness, but we all have that energy within us to varying degrees. And that energy, that aggressive energy, that ability to defend in, say, a life-threatening situation, is very instinctual and innate, especially in men, also in women. But for men, it is a very big part of what makes them feel confident in this life, knowing that they can move through any environment and be able to defend themselves physically and those they love physically, is really important, and for the most part lacking in our culture. That suppressed aggression. So here's what I'm going to slow down. Here's what happens. Often people experience aggression in their childhood and they shut that whole part of themselves down because they never want to be like that. And so they become very passive and very gentle. And, this makes sense because if you've experienced violence and you don't want to perpetuate that, this totally makes sense. It's like, okay, we're gonna drop that. We're gonna not do that. But suppressed aggression is actually super unhealthy and will usually lead to, if you haven't alchemized those experiences in yourself, that suppressed aggression will usually come out in either outbursts or in suppressed sexuality or unhealthy sexuality. It also can come out in, and this is the piece that I really want to touch on today, because I feel like this is a piece that people often lack an awareness around. It can also come out in struggles in the providership role of being able to go out there and get after it. And the reason that this impacts those areas of a man's life so deeply is that life force energy, that ability to use your body like a weapon to fight and train, it's natural in all mammals. It's natural in all animals, from puppyhood. I just got a puppy, so I'm like puppy brain, but from baby animal phase all the way through that's like, if you look at animals, some of their first games are play fighting, right? And this is because in nature, the ability to protect yourselves is really important. With predators, play fighting. With animals like deer, they're more likely to play hide and seek kind of games and runaway games, which is different. But for human beings, it's very natural. And that life force energy that you use, that is what is the energy required to be able to defend yourself or defend something you love, is a very important part of who you are. And if you suppress all of that, so you're suppressing the negative, you saw the dark side, you experienced the dark side of that energy of unhomed aggression, of that potential and capacity for violence that is detrimental, that is a misuse of power, right? And with that misuse of power, there's then that association of like not wanting to activate that part of yourself. And so it becomes dormant. But that aggressive energy that exists, again, especially in men, is important for like physical well-being. It's important for mental well-being. It's actually like part of what makes your brain function, what makes you feel alive and full of life force. So to be a man of like able-bodied age, like of any age really, and not be physically training your body, you're going to be suppressing a huge part of yourself. And it doesn't matter, like I've seen this with, it doesn't matter how successful you are in your business or your relationships, if this part is lacking, I can guarantee you that you're not accessing everything that you're here to access. There's like a whole world waiting for you. And in the providership role, how this shows up is that, okay, so that aggressive energy, that ability to fight, defend, to run quickly, to hunt, is actually, if you think about, your brain, your human brain, which hasn't evolved that much from like 10,000 years ago, if you had that ability to access that aggression, that speed, that hunting, that fighting, you then become one of the greatest hunters in your tribe. You are able to go out and literally kill the bison with other men, potentially other women as well, depending on which part of the world and what's going on. But you're going out there as a group to go and hunt and kill a bison, or you're going out by yourself to go and hunt and kill an animal and chase after it, and maybe need to, finish it with your hands. Those are incredibly valuable, important skills. And the energetics of that is part of your instinctual makeup as a man. It is very natural, and those instincts exist within you, even though our humanity has evolved with technology, and we now have grocery stores and farming and all these other things. But that aggressive energy to go out and get that bison is something that I see that I've noticed, not always, but can be present in men who've grown up in homes where there was violence, especially with their father. It can impact them in a way that is like feeling that, like, I'm going to go out and get that. I'm going to make my place in this world. I'm going to claim my place in this world, feels very uncomfortable because they are associating it with that, in the case of their childhood, misused or abused aggressive energy, misused power, essentially. And so there's this like ceiling that many men will hit in their entrepreneurial journey, also in their relationships, where they're like, I can't go beyond this because it doesn't feel safe, because they haven't integrated that powerful energy. They haven't honed that powerful energy. And so when when I see this in entrepreneurs with business, it also shows up like this, where the other part that can show up is that they are not wanting to surpass their parents in terms of income or in terms of impact in the world, because there's this like loyalty, and this does not really have, this isn't only present in homes where there was violence, present in a lot of families where there's this like discomfort of surpassing your parents. And yet it's the most natural thing ever that you would surpass your parents. And yet we live in this very interestingly structured society where men between the age of like 18 and 24, say, or 30, now with like the nutrition we have access to, that age of like really high powered physical life force, that ability to just go and go and go and go and go, and to be reckless, to try new things, to face adversity, to experience danger, to challenge themselves. Like that is such an important part of humanity. And that energy has been collectively shunned and shamed, of like with the, you know, toxic masculinity, with the feminine empowerment movement, the misuse of power is one thing. Masculinity is not toxic. The absence of that instinctual masculinity that is deeply connected to that life force energy that can go out and, you know, get the bison, or the metaphorical example of that bison, whatever it is in this current day, being able to go out there and like make a business and earn a really good income and bring that back to your family is the equivalent of going out and getting the bison, being able to feed your tribe now for the next few months, right? It's the same energetics, and yet people often have a whole story around money and business, and especially if they're, you know, childhood association. Like I've worked with men who have had a childhood association of like the businessmen were somehow like slimy, or which there are tons of that. There is tons of that. There's tons of like, again, misuse of power, but there's also a totally in integrity way to run your business, where you are out there and you are hunting and you are bringing home the bacon literally and being honored in that. I think it's incredible how the weight of the provider role that you know, our society almost like shuns men in that role, as we have all the like feminine empowerment, super like hyper independent boss babe industry with the, you know, disposable man, all these sort of concepts and ideas. Men in their instinctual being still wanting to stand in that providership role, which is a challenge. But then on top of that, not being recognized for it, it's a very interesting dynamic. The other way that, going back to this, like if you've experienced violence in your childhood, especially from your father, the other way that this impacts you is, or may have impacted you, is through that suppression of that aggressive energy. So that aggressive energy is very similar to sexual energy. And if aggressive energy doesn't feel safe in your body because you haven't learned how to, or had the opportunity or the right environment to hone and master that energy, to train it, to master it, it will always be there. Like that energy isn't going to go away. If you're not connected to that energy, chances are you're going to feel or struggle with depression, anxiety, low cognitive function, because your testosterone is also linked to that energy. And I'm not saying you have to go out there and be like, you know, like beating your chest and like, that's not really what I mean. But having that mastery around your physical body and the awareness of what it can do, as that increases, your confidence also increases, and how you show up in intimacy increases, because you're not, what I've seen in many situations is where that the connection to that energy, that life force, essentially it is like the life force that runs through men in a very powerful way. And when it's been suppressed and not activated, and then the way that that's showing up in their intimate experiences and in their sexuality, combined with porn addiction or porn use, what's happening is that there's like an addiction to this very surface level way of experiencing, I don't even know if I want to call it intimacy, but experiencing women and experiencing sex that is all about like quick release. And it's about like chasing and hunting women rather than chasing and hunting whatever the equivalent is of that bison, which might be your goals in your business, or might be your physical dedication to train your body to become the most incredible weapon, machine, physical specimen of a human being that your bloodline has ever seen. And instead that energy is funneled to like how porn has like affected men's brains, and also like culturally how we interact in terms of like normal or not normal, current standardized dating and relationship practices. There's like sex has become this like drug that's like an addiction, that's very often very impersonal, that has very little to do with building legacy, there's very little to do with building family. And even within, I'll say like there's that whole like hookup culture, whatever, even within committed long-term relationships, I'm seeing this dynamic as well, where the way that men and women are relating to each other, it's a very superficial level of intimacy. It's like nothing, nowhere near what is actually possible. And again, tying like this a whole other video, I could make a whole video about that, but tying this into understanding that connection to, if you've experienced violence in your childhood home, whatever that looks like, whether it was you or someone else, but it was present, and you have, suppressed that part of yourself because it felt unsafe, or you didn't want to associate yourself with that violence that you experienced, chances are you are also suppressing a large part of your sexuality and life force energy. Because when you are using the way that like pornography wires people's brains is to have that like very addictive immediate gratification, like very low like connection, where they're almost as though the procreative aspect of sex and intimacy has been forgotten and taken away. So it's like very, very different for men when they're looking for that almost like that validation from those sexual experiences, is very different from when they're looking for a partner who's going to bury their children and carry on their bloodline, right? And in that, and this is where I see this even in like long-term committed relationships, where men don't have that connection, that deep connection to the masculine, aggressive energy, life force energy that exists within them. They're looking to feel that with their partner, which it just shows up very differently in how they are in their intimate and sexual experiences. it's like night and day, actually, when they're experiencing that intense life force energy in a way that involves mastery, that it involves, if you're training that energy as a fighter, there's such a high level of dedication to your body. And then what you're desiring to experience from the feminine is really different, where you're showing up as a man in a really different way through that. And I'll save that for another video because I don't want to make this too long. But if you are finding that you're hitting a ceiling in your business and you're an entrepreneur, and these are some of the things that I'm touching on are relevant for you, I would invite you to sit with that and look at, where does that, where have you not fully integrated or alchemized those experiences of misuse of power, toxic masculine energy, and where can you bring your own instinctual masculine energy fully online in a way that is healthy, in a way that feels powerful, in a way that allows you to show up as the provider, protector, father, lover, husband, warrior that you are meant to be in this lifetime.